Welcome to American History Lesson 4, War for Independence. Our lesson objectives are: identify and understand the actions of England and the American colonies that led to the American War for Independence, identify and understand the actions of the American colonies to organize and fight against England, possess basic knowledge of important battles of the War of Independence as well as the significant contributors to the war, identify and understand how the War for Independence affected the non-combatants of the American colonies. Setting the stage for war. Tensions once again grew between England and the American colonies in 1765 when the English Parliament passed the Stamp Act. This new law required colonists to buy government stamps when buying anything from wills to playing cards. The Stamp Act was the first British tax to directly affect the average colonist. The colonists were outraged, with colonial merchants vowing to boycott British goods until the act was repealed. Leaders throughout the colonies met and declared that only colonial assemblies, not the English Parliament, could pass tax laws. Parliament repealed the Stamp Act, but insisted that they had the power to govern the colonies in all matters. The English Parliament backed up this claim by passing the Townshend Act, which imposed indirect taxes on the colonies. The American colonists erupted in riots in Boston, which prompted the British to station troops there. In a fight with local workers in 1770, the soldiers opened fire upon them, killing 5 Bostonians. This act increased anger against the British, with Samuel Adams calling it the Boston Massacre. To try and calm feelings, the British government withdrew the majority of taxes except the tax on tea. In 1773, the British tried to help a near-bankrupt British company by giving the company a monopoly on the tea trade to the colonies. This prevented colonial merchants from selling their tea products. In response, a group of Bostonians, dressed as Native Americans, boarded 3 ships and dumped crates of tea into Boston Harbor. This act became known as the Boston Tea Party. The English Parliament then passed a set of punishing laws the colonists called the Intolerable Acts. The port of Boston was closed and troops were deployed to maintain British law. In 1774, delegates from the colonies met in Philadelphia in the First Continental Congress. They issued a Declaration of Colonial Rights. The American colonies prepare for war. Many colonists formed themselves into military companies. The British decided to seize their weapons. British troops briefly fought colonial Minutemen in the town of Lexington. Minutemen were men from Massachusetts that were selected from the ranks of American colonial partisan militia during the American Revolutionary War. The Minutemen were a highly mobile, rapidly deployed force that allowed the colonies to respond immediately to war threats. When the British marched back to Boston, Minutemen ambushed them and killed many soldiers. In 1775, the colonies again sent delegates to Philadelphia to convene the Second Continental Congress. John Adams of Massachusetts wanted the colonies to declare themselves independent of Great Britain, but the Second Continental Congress could not agree on this action. They did create an army, however, placing George Washington in command. In June 1775, British troops fought the colonials again near Boston in the Battle of Bunker Hill. The British took heavy losses in this battle, but still drove the colonial army from the field. The colonial army retreated, but easily regrouped with minimal losses, while the British army lost many of its officers. Hoping for peace, the Second Continental Congress sent a plea called the Olive Branch Petition to King George III. The king rejected any notion of peace and self-rule, and this caused more colonists to begin to favor independence. Many colonists were further persuaded by a pamphlet called Common Sense. In this pamphlet, Thomas Paine blamed the colonists' troubles on the king and not his government. In June 1776, a delegate from Virginia urged the Congress declare independence. Thomas Jefferson of Virginia was asked to write a document stating the colony's reasons for independence. On July 2, 1776, the delegates voted to free the colonies of British rule. 2 days later, they approved Jefferson's Declaration of Independence. Fun fact, the first print run of Common Sense actually made a Thomas Paine a healthy profit. Paine would never see any profit as the original publisher, Robert Bell, kept the proceeds. Paine gave the profits from later additions to the Continental Army purportedly to buy mittens for the winter. Many colonists who opposed the independence movement called themselves loyalists. Supporters of independence were called patriots. Native Americans who thought the colonists threatened their land supported the British. Many African American slaves were given promises of freedom, so they joined the British cause as well. Others fought with the patriots. In March 1776, the British removed their troops from Boston. They planned to split New England from the rest of the colonies by seizing New York. Washington assembled an army to oppose them, but his soldiers were poorly prepared and equipped. The British beat them badly in August. Washington retreated south. On Christmas Day of 1776, he staged a surprise attack across the Delaware River. His surprise attack captured almost 1,000 enemy soldiers. After another Patriot victory, the two sides settled down for winter camp. The following spring, British troops won two battles near Philadelphia. Congress fled the city, which the British then occupied. The tides of war change. Patriots got some much-needed good news in 1777. An army of British troops and Native Americans marched south from Canada. However, a Patriot army beat them at Bennington, Vermont. The Patriot army then engaged the British at Saratoga, New York, and won a decisive victory. Saratoga cheered the Patriots and convinced the French that the colonists had a chance to win the war. Hoping to hurt their longtime enemy, the British, the French recognized American independence. They agreed to send troops and supplies. Before French aid could arrive, however, Washington and his soldiers spent a miserable winter at Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. Short on food, blankets, and clothing, the American soldiers suffered hunger and frostbite, with more than 2,000 soldiers died. Congress could not provide the needed supplies because it had difficulty raising the money needed to conduct the war. It managed to do so by borrowing money and printing paper money. Printing money had a bad effect, though, as prices for food and supplies began to rise. During the winter of Valley Forge, a German officer named Baron Friedrich von Steuben began to train the Patriot Army. These efforts turned the ragtag militias and scattered marksmen into a fighting army. Washington was aided by a French officer, Marquis de Lafayette. The first year after Saratoga proved hard on the Patriots, though. The British hoped to rally Loyalist support in the South and moved operations there. At the end of 1778, the British took Savannah, Georgia, and in May 1780, they captured Charlestown, South Carolina, taking 5,500 Patriot soldiers as prisoners of war. With yet another victory, they soon had to secure a hold on Georgia and South Carolina. Washington sent General Nathanael Greene south to stop the British. One part of Greene's army defeated Redcoats at Cowpens, South Carolina in January 1781. Then the British moved north to Virginia. The commander, Charles Cornwallis, foolishly occupied a narrow peninsula near Yorktown. Patriot and French forces moved in and trapped Cornwallis's troops. Meanwhile, a French fleet blocked British ships from delivering supplies or rescuing their soldiers. On October 19, 1781, Cornwallis surrendered to Washington. The next year, the Patriots and British began to discuss terms for peace. The American delegates were John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, and John Jay. They insisted that the British recognize American independence. In the Treaty of Paris, the British gave the new nation land all the way west to the Mississippi River. The home front during the War of Independence. Women contributed to the war effort. With husbands and fathers away fighting, they ran family farms and businesses. They did what they could to raise supplies. Many women decided to travel with the army, washing and cooking for their husbands and other troops. Many felt a new sense of freedom and self-confidence. The American Revolution had profound effects on American society. As rich and poor fought together, people began to have a sense of egalitarianism, the equality of all people. Many urged that the new nation extend freedom by ending slavery, but Southern states were unwilling to lose their laborers. Women did not gain any further political or social rights either. What's next? Take the time to go back and review the lesson on your own. After your review, complete the lesson review for the lesson and submit for grading. Remember, your submission should follow all the rules for standard written English. All submissions must be written in your own words and sources used cited at the end. How to cite sources in APA format. When you reference a source within an APA-style paper, whether it is using a direct quote, repurposing an image, or simply referring to an idea or theory, you should insert an in-text citation, the author's surname, and the date of publication within parentheses straight after a direct quote. CitationMachine.net will assist you in creating citations.